Good Sunday evening to everyone. Welcome to the Bullpen Podcast. Hope everyone's having a fantastic August Sunday. I'm your host, Adam Kunos. You can follow me on Twitter at Kunos19. Don't forget to follow the show, The Bullpen Pod, on Twitter as well, at The Bullpen Pod. We are sponsored by Fanatics. Head over to Fanatics using the Linktree link in our Twitter bio for everything Major League Baseball, including hats, jerseys, sweatshirts, t-shirts, collectibles, and more. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, happy Sunday to all. Hope everyone enjoyed the Padres-Dodgers on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. I'm actually joined by a special guest tonight. We're going to switch things up a little tonight. We're going to kind of sidetrack from our baseball chat to talk a little more professional business side of sports. And with that, I'm going to welcome in Lee Elias. Lee, thank you very much for joining us. You are host of Our Kids Play Hockey, Geeks Who Like Sports. You do the Elimination Cafe videos on YouTube. Welcome to the Bullpen Podcast, my friend.
Hey, Adam. Thanks, man. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And yes, I do have my hand in all sorts of sports ventures. It's a blessed life. I never complain about it. And I love the deep cuts that you picked from there. I know you enjoyed some of these things we've done over the years. So it's always actually awesome to be able to talk about them. So thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Did I miss anything that you do? Like, give us a little background of like your involvement with. I know you're big with the game of hockey, but just your sports in general.
Yeah, well, I got into sports a little later in life. I was probably, I was always athletic, but around, 12 years old when I started playing hockey, and I realized that, I'm not a bad athlete. So I was an athlete through college. I played college hockey, and pretty soon after college, after a really short cup of coffee in the minors, I realized I had a little bit of a knack for coaching. So in addition to my broadcasting degree that I got in college, I searched out a master's degree in sports management. I've been really privileged to coach literally from every level, international, professional, college, junior, youth sports, and not just in hockey. And then I own multiple sports businesses. So I again, when I say it's a blessed life, I really mean it. I don't take it for granted. I really love getting to wake up every day and work in sports, whether it's my hockey company, the product company that I have called Hockey Wraparound, or the plethora of podcasts that you just talked about, which I'll tell you a funny story about in a minute, or my professional coaching, which I still do in the team building kind of team performance realm. But yeah, I had a passion for it. And I'll tell you, I remember hearing a lot when I was younger that you'll never make a life in that. And that just pissed me off to the point that I decided to make a life in that. And, I'm very proud of it to this day. And above all, I get to work with some really great people. Obviously the people that work in my office, I talked about my producer, Caitlin, who's always on board to help us out, with my business partner, Matt, and everybody really around that does it. And it really is who you do it with. And then there's people like you that invite me on, and listen, there's not many people that could get me to come out to the studio at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, but you were you're like, listen, I want to talk about business and sports. This is what we do. And I was like, I can't say no to that. So I'm happy to be here. I really mean that.
Thank you very much. I'll give you a little hitch. I'm actually completing my college degree in sports management myself. So I work for Disney, and Disney has the Disney Aspire program. So it got me back into school. I'm completing my program. I should be done by end of August. September will be fully completed. I'll probably graduate next summer. So I'll actually have my degree in sports management. I chose sports management because I love sports. I love playing sports. I love talking sports. What better way than to get into the aspects of sports about this? So I'm excited to talk about this. And yeah, we got our first comment. I'll show on here. Caitlin, thank you for the comment. We are excited for this as well.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you this too, man. First off, congratulations on that, pursuing that degree. I loved my master's. I loved, I remember taking like the law classes of this and enjoying them. And I remember like joking, like reading a law book. Like I never thought I'd enjoy this, but I'm enjoying reading a law book right now. So it's a cool place to be. And, aside from just the fandom of sports, there is so much more to it than that. And I love everything about it. It's fun for me. It's like play for me. So I love that you're pursuing that as well. And down in Florida of all places. And
yeah,
it's tough.
And I'll tell you one thing, law classes, right? I actually enjoyed the law classes. I took it part of my degree. I actually loved diving into I get reading case files, something like
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a professional for this, but
Yeah.
somehow I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So yeah, you said my show geeks who like sports. So the geek stuff is all the comic book stuff and the movie stuff. Then there's the nerds who like sports. The nerd is the law. It's like, hey man, I've got a huge law book. And I did well in that class. And I remember joking with my wife, like, maybe I should have been a lawyer. She's like, you never would have. I never would have been. This never would have worked out. And I don't want to be an agent either. So it worked out.
Awesome. But let's go ahead and jump right into this. So the first topic we're going to talk about is kind of been a hit or miss with fans. Ads for jerseys on the field.
Right.
European leagues do this more than I think North American leagues. They plaster as many logos as they can or sponsor logos on a jersey. Major League Soccer was kind of the first out of the professional sports to do this because if you know soccer, a soccer jersey comes with 3 to 4 ads on it, regardless of if you buy a replica or an authentic. The NBA took a dive in this back in 2016-17 with just a little patch on the jerseys. The NHL took it a little step further. They did ads on helmets. Now they're moving to ads on jerseys. Major League Baseball started this season. The NFL is the only league that doesn't do this, but they do it on practice jerseys. So what is your thought about advertisement on jerseys? Are you a fan of it? Do you like it? Do you see the benefit to it?
Yeah, short answer is I have really no issues with it. And again, for a lot of the reasons that you said. So I used to coach in Europe, and the main jersey logo is actually the afterthought, right? The sponsor is almost the main logo. And there's a lot of different reasons for this. European has a different business model than we do. Now, I'll also say this, dude. I love the purity of the logo and, wearing the banner on the chest. The reason I don't have a problem with it right now, and I'll tell you this, my answer might have been different 5 or 6 years ago. But the pandemic really took a lot of money out of pro sports, I think more than anyone realizes. And I think that I also don't think a lot of pro sports teams make as much as people think. I think that they gross a lot, but I don't know if they necessarily net a lot. And again, I'm not talking the New York Yankees here, right? We're talking about broadly across the board here. But I think the total was like 13 or 14 billion dollars was lost during the pandemic, and it's going to take the sports teams decades to probably recoup that. So if there's a little logo in the corner of a jersey, it's not the end of the world to me. I'm not here for the jersey. I'm here for the sport. Right. So I also understand the other side of it, though, Adam. There's a purity to it that takes away. But again, I think when you take a broad look at it and how much money was lost over the last few years, keeping things in perspective, again, we're talking pro sports. Right. So it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I'll tell you what does bother me. It's not the ad. It's the colors of the ad, or like a good example. Like the Philadelphia Flyers have a sponsor this year whose logo is like a weird turquoise blue. And it's like, why, guys? Why are you putting we're orange and black and white, right? The blue does not fit into that jersey. And people can say, well, it'll make it stick out more. You know what'll make me like your brand? If the brand fits the color scheme of the jersey, right? It always bugs me when it's like, how does that even happen, right? So, but I don't have a problem with the ads. There you go.
Yeah, so I was kind of like you. I was kind of back and forth on the ads. My only issue with the ads in Major League Baseball was they flipped the team patch that some teams have on it to the opposite sleeve. So the sponsor patch, if you're going to put a sponsor, make it uniform. Make it on one sleeve or the other. Don't switch. It just looks, call my OCD, it looks out of order on jerseys, but that's just my little gripe. I see a benefit, though, to jersey ads, and I have some numbers. In 2021 to 2022, the NBA jersey ad program was over $200 million in additional revenue into the league. The Major League Baseball, the Red Sox signed their jersey deal with Mass Mutual was for 10 year with a $17 million deal. So they are profitable and bringing in more money to teams. And I see that benefit because, and you kind of jumped a topic we're going to get to later with the COVID-19 pandemic. I think once we saw these teams go into like these bubble league short sprint seasons, advertisements, especially on jerseys, became, okay, how do we jump into this? What's the benefit of it? And I see that there's more of a benefit now to jumping in. And I agree with you. If you put a jersey ad on there, at least color it to the team color.
I never got
the Blue Jays have a TD Waterhouse logo that's a bright green on a dark blue, red, and blue. Color to the team logo or something. At least make it more identifiable to the team that they're wearing.
Well, I'll give you a funny example in hockey, right? So part of the branding of this for me is, you want to endear me to your brand, right? You don't want to make fun of your brand. So I think one of the best placed logo ads is actually the Toronto Maple Leafs, who basically it's milk, right? It's the farmers of Canada. And it's like, how do you mess this up, right? The milk logo is blue and white. And somebody will say, well, how do you? I noticed it. And I'm lactose intolerant. And I like the ad, right? So it's one of those things of like, you can endear yourself to a fan base if you do it right. And again, look, I'm going to say this again, that, I don't think people fully grasp how much money and revenue is lost during that 2 or 3 year period. Keeping in mind too, that I also, and again, I don't have the full financial data on this, but those bubble leagues, I don't think they had to do them. I think they did them for the fans. I really do. I really think that they came together and said, we got to get playing again. We need to give these people something. But I'll tell you right now, running a mini league in a bubble with no fan base and no ticket revenue and maybe just some of the commercial revenue, you're not making as much as you think. And again, I have to say this. I keep pro sports in perspective. All right. We have decided as a society that this is something we're going to pour billions of dollars into. Do I think pro athletes should be making billions of dollars over doctors and, scientists and people who really do affect the world? Probably not. But at the same time, if people want the business of sports to run, there has to be money, and again, you're sports management masters here. You study this, like the cash flow is everything. I mean, leagues have people don't realize how close some of these leagues have come to going under, like how close some of these leagues have come to going under. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
right?
I gotcha.
It's amazing when you study it. And again, like, yeah, if you compare anybody next to the New York Yankees, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Green Bay Packers, I mean, if you compare anybody against these Titans, it looks weird. But, when you look at the Marlins and what they've done in the past, right? And other teams that are just not huge cities, the Oakland A's, not anymore, right? So
yeah,
there's a lot of things you can look at here, but I have no problem with the league taking it upon themselves to do something for the financial health of the league, because it will help the league continue. And again, we're still nowhere close to what European jerseys look like. I mean, nowhere close. I mean, it is like everywhere on the jersey. If there's an open spot, there's an ad on it, right? But then again, those fans aren't coming for the jerseys; they're coming for the game, right? I'll give, like, again, I'm talking a lot. One of my favorite ones is I tell my friends all the time, if you look at the United Kingdom and really think about not just the Premier League, the Championship, League One, League Two, like think about how many teams that is. That's 4 leagues of teams that all exist in an area that would be the size of 4 normal sized states in America. Like, it's intense. You know what I mean? It's intense. Imagine all the NFL being in Pennsylvania. You know what? It wouldn't be Pennsylvania. It would blow up. You know what I mean? But like, that's the equivalent. So again, when you get a worldly view on this, it changes, I think, your opinion on things.
Yeah. And commissioners have come out and said, we're not going to be going the way Europeans league out. We're not going to cover the jersey in complete ads. They've come out and said there'll probably be one patch on a jersey at most. Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, I see again. Yeah. And you said it so well, when I was doing sports management cash flow, I'll get the Tampa Bay Rays down here in Florida have such a poor attendance draw, but yet they have a competitive team year after year. They were in the World Series in 2020. They were the best team in the league the following year.
Yeah.
I mean,
2008 as well. I
just want to say 2008 as well. I know for a Phillies fan.
Yeah. I remember that one pretty well. Yeah.
But the way they put a product on the field is how they stay competitive, and it's just how they can jump into that. My last question on this topic is, the NFL is the only league that doesn't do ads on jerseys. Do you see them jumping into this pool anytime soon?
They're so cash rich, probably not. I mean, again, it's a necessity thing. So look, the benefit for football teams is they only play, a few times a year, if you really think about it. And baseball, hundreds of games, hockey, 82 games, basketball around the same, I mean, a football team is 8 home games, maybe 9 home games, depending on the year. That's if you don't make the playoffs, right? So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the NFL is still the only league where their TV deal is worth more than their ticket deal, right? So it's a totally different business model, and I don't think the NFL has any issues selling advertising space at this point, right? So the The other leagues are not as cash rich as the NFL.
Yeah. So, but you've already talked about this. Let's talk about leagues and how much money they lost during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was down here in Florida when the NBA and MLS came in. I was actually over at the sports complex as a Disney cast member when the NBA bubble and the MLS bubble were kind of in play. I didn't see much, but I kind of saw like the security and like what they were doing. How did that really affect the leagues financially, in your opinion?
COVID-19 or the bubble you're talking about?
Let's talk COVID-19 first, and then let's move into bubble leagues.
I mean, it's devastating. I mean, the whole, again, you kind of have to move the NFL aside a little bit here, right? But when you look at baseball, soccer, hockey, and basketball, these are leagues that depend on that ticket revenue by and large. So if the fans can't come, you're going to have a massive financial problem. So again, I believe the number was $14 billion of revenue was lost in professional sports. Keeping in mind too, like if you're a fan, you pay, it's a lot, but you pay for the ticket, you pay for the food, you pay for the merch, you're paying for all this stuff, right? And you're essentially, teams are doing this 41 times a year or more. So you lose all that revenue. Again, how do you support a team? I mean, it's not like these teams, again, some of them do, like, again, the very rare examples, they don't just have billions and billions of dollars just sitting in a bank account, right? They rely on the cash flow. So the cash flow stopped and they had to find a way to survive. So again, that's why I think you're seeing the advancements in board technology in hockey. Like they've completely redone how you look at advertisements in hockey. Which people complain about that, which I thought was ridiculous, right? Like, why these boards on they're doing the ads on the boards now. I was like, if you're watching the ads on the boards, then this isn't, I'm watching the game.
Exactly.
Right? And it's not like soccer and the NFL haven't been doing this for years. This is just traditionalists complaining, right? By the way, if anybody was listening saying that, feel free to come at me. They had to find ways to redo this. Now, again, I was in the camp of I wasn't a big fan of how Major League Baseball ran their return. I think football was super careful. And I think, I was really impressed with the NHL with the bubble that they created. I don't think they had to do that. And I would really be shocked if they made any money doing that. Right. Because it's just like you're running a league in a bubble and then the playoffs and the cup final under really strenuous circumstances and nobody can go. So I think it was, honestly, outside the Spanish flu of 1919, probably the biggest financial hit these leagues have ever taken. I mean, think about here's one for you, bud. Think about what these leagues have survived. Like Major League Baseball had a entire season pretty much missed because of a lockout. We all know hockey's had multiple lockouts, right? I mean, the things that these leagues have survived in the past pretty easily. I mean, massive steroid problems. I mean, it's just. And then nobody came for 2 years. I mean, I would have been scared. And look, here's the other thing. Again, I'm thinking about it now. Look at the layoffs that happened, like during that time or right after. A lot of these teams shuffled the deck. A lot of broadcasters lost their jobs because they were just too highly paid. They needed to find ways to cut. So I think it was way more devastating to pro sports than anybody realizes. I do think also saying that they'll be absolutely fine because people always come back. All right. But yeah, you're looking at about a decade of really cost analysis and getting that money back. I don't think it's going to happen overnight.
Yeah, and it's funny when you say that the way they're going to recover. I mean, hockey, they did 2 separate bubbles in Canada, one the East, one the West Coast, and then kind of met in the middle for the Stanley Cup. The NBA did a bubble down here in Florida. Major League Baseball, again, they got criticized so heavily for how they did their season. They went back and forth. They were just arguing with the union back and forth about how to restart the season. Right. And then they finally landed on, we're going to just do 60 games playing division, interleague division games, and then we'll do the playoff system later. Then they kind of made that a mess. That was a whole mess, in my opinion, how they
was a mess.
The playoffs and the World Series.
I thought they did a horrible job. I'll say that publicly.
This is a baseball podcast. I criticize everything baseball, so feel free to criticize them.
Well, look, I'll tell you this. This season, I have been really hard on the MLB. I started to come out of that show a little bit last postseason. I mean, I'm a little bit biased because the Phillies went all the way, but I was really upset with the MLB and I thought they made every wrong decision possible in pro sports over the last 5 years. But I will say that they are starting to win me back now. I'm a fan of the pitch clock, and I'm a fan of some of the changes they make, and they're starting to seem to be figuring it out. I'm a little weirded out that you have the greatest enigma in the last 100 years in baseball in Anaheim, and I still don't think that's being promoted enough. I'm blown away that he's not getting more attention, but I've been very critical of baseball, but I think they finally turned the corner, seem to be going a better direction now.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, again, Shohei Ohtani, that's probably the greatest player we've seen in the last 100 years, going back
Ever.
to Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
I mean, he pitches, he bats. I mean, sad that he's out in Anaheim, but I mean, the Angels have him under contract. But
listen, I agree with you. I'm going to talk about this for a minute because I've been dying to talk about this, right? I do agree with you in the current state of baseball. Yeah, wow, he's on the Angels. But at the same time, that's a problem that we're saying that. Why should a guy have to be on the Sox or the Yankees or the Dodgers for us to talk about him? Right now, again, I'm also a big believer in this. He's fantastic. I mean, you do need to win championships in any pro sport to be really considered the greatest of all time or in that talk, okay? And he's not going to do that there. But I think that exposes a larger problem with baseball, right? Again, when a guy gets a generational or it's more than generational, right? It's like centennial talents, right? It shouldn't be like, well, we need to get him to this team. So he's there. So that's always amazed me about baseball, and that you get a guy like that there, and it's like that's just not good enough. We need to move him someplace that is a titan for it to work out. I think that's a shame. But that's also baseball, and that's been baseball for a long time, right? Keep in mind, I'm a hockey fan talking here, so that's always bothered me though.
No, I'll agree with you. I think when it comes to promoting players, I think baseball is about maybe 5 steps behind what the NHL, NBA, NFL does in promoting its athletes. Mm-hmm. I think they're slowly starting to catch up. I'll give you an example. This year's All-Star ad, it was pretty much all the players at the airport getting to Seattle. Ohtani comes in, the flat person at the windows like, I have you as the pitcher and a DH. Who are you? And Ohtani's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Which I think is great the way they're playing that, because you did speak about board advertisement in the NHL, how they redid the boards for digital ads. I love how they do that. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a lot more digital ads on the ice, on fields of play. Do you see leagues expanding that more?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Look, advertising is part of pro sports, however you slice it. If you don't have ads, you're not playing pro sports at that point, right? So I think any advantage a league can give itself to do ads more creatively, even more fun, what's the problem with that? I mean, if you think about it, the Super Bowl every year, people watch for the commercials. So this isn't something that people hate, right? They say they do, but the truth is, if you make a great ad, you make a great ad. All right. I think that part of the change that's coming is making sure that those ads are tailored better for the audience. I mean, because that's the way things are now, right? If you can be watching sports and get ads that are very relevant to you, I think it makes the game even more enjoyable, right? I do need that. Not everybody needs to join AARP right now, right? So it's one of those things of if the ads can be tailored or the experience can be tailored. And look, we're on the verge here of augmented reality really taking over. I'm actually surprised that like season virtual tickets are not more prominent yet. Like where you could buy a headset seat at a courtside of the Knicks game and really just turn your head back and forth and you're there, right? I think that technology is already here. We just haven't deployed it yet. And then I also think that one of the things that's going to evolve, actually part of my master's thesis about this, is that augmented reality of like, what if the experience alone could be more tailored to you with your cell phone or whatever device you're using, where, you're seeing this at home now a little bit more, where it's like, what do you think is going to happen on the next play? Right. I think that's fascinating. Right. So I think that there's actually a lot more evolution that's going to happen technologically from an advertising standpoint, and then your ability to interact with the game. And again, look, you're seeing this in other sports, like some of these other sports leagues where they want the fans to interact to help pick the next play, which I think is crazy and probably not the best idea. But, why shouldn't fans help pick the jersey for Tuesday night, right? And again, it's how subtle you do it. We're talking about advertisements, right? Like, what if you're a Sox fan, right? So
yeah.
What if they came out and said, okay, we got 3 jerseys for this game coming up in September, right? You pick. By the way, this is brought to you by, right? You're probably going to remember, or I don't know who the big Chicago advertisers are, but it's like this brand wants you to pick the jersey that we're going to use. Now you're endeared to the brand, right? So I think a lot of that stuff's going to start happening.
No, I mean, it's funny because it's funny how a device like my cell phone can be linked to like just that. And as crazy as it sounds, the fans pick the plays. I would love to see that like an all-star game where where it's just like an exhibition game. Say for like an all-star game where you're just there to have fun.
Right.
But again, there's so much more. That this comes into our last topic, the impact this has on fans. So, and when we finally started to get back to a sense of normality after the pandemic, 2021, we started seeing fans return to the stands. I went to my first baseball game out in Colorado when we were on a road trip to see a Rockies game, and the stadium was about maybe 75% full. They hadn't really sold a lot of tickets. We went to a Guardians game this past July 3rd, and it was a complete sellout. I mean, largest crowd since 2012.
Wow, that's cool.
Are we getting back to that sense of normality, and are the fans finally getting that sense of trust with their franchises?
Oh, I'd say so. Yeah, look, those. I mean, obviously they had the pandemic years, and then there was a couple of years there, or really like a year where, what are we doing? I think we know a lot more about that, being outdoors, especially for baseball, is a pretty safe environment now. I also think that, the pandemic is over. We're endemic at this point. I'm not saying it's not still out there, but the danger of the virus for anybody who's not compromised. Sorry, it's late. I think we know it's survivable now, right? So, yeah, I think that fans are coming back. And look, I'll take this to a whole nother level for you from a fandom standpoint. People need their communities, right? You need to be part of a community if you really want to, be sufficient in life. No one does this stuff alone. I think sports communities in America are some of the most important communities in the world. And look, what's funny is that, Adam, I'm thinking about this. If you remember when we first started coming back, fans were doing some crazy stuff, like saying things and throwing stuff and touching athletes, because they've been cooped up for 2 years. And again, none of that behavior was acceptable, but it shows you kind of the passion of what happens when this stuff goes away. So, look, I'll give you a good example. I think 50,000 people showed up in Philadelphia today for the Eagles practice. The Eagles had an open practice at the Link today. 50,000 fans showed up. So, yeah, I think people want their sports back. This was a practice, right? Again, look, like here's one. Here's a plot twist I didn't even see coming. I'm from Philadelphia, born and raised. We're not known for being the kindest fans in the world, but I just watched a full baseball stadium the last 48 hours give Trey Turner, who's having a horrible season, a standing ovation in Philadelphia, thus making Philadelphia tout itself for its kindness. Again, biggest plot twist in history. And then the guy hits pretty much the game-winning home run last night. I mean, it's beautiful, the majesty and the magic of sports. And again, yeah, I think you're seeing it across the board. I think it will continue to trend that way. And I think we're kind of just back to the point now of like, if the team's winning, you're going to have a fan base there. But it doesn't mean that the financial woes that we talked about earlier are just gone, right? It's going to take a decade before they're back to probably where they were. And I think technology plays a role into that. I think fans play a role in that. I think also most teams are being pretty smart about letting their fans know how important it is that they show up. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're the lifeblood of the whole organization. If you don't pay to be here, we don't have a team. So, yeah, I think it's going the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw something else at you. When you look back at like the 30s and 40s, advertisement was everywhere. I mean, the Green Monster had a bunch of ads on. There was advertisement all over stadiums back in the day, like we're talking 30s, 40s, and we kind of got away from that trend like the 60s, 70s, 80s where ads weren't relevant. Now they're starting to make a comeback. It's something that we've seen before, but yet we're just kind of still new to it because we're not used to seeing it.
Right. Well, I think also too, there's an evolution here. Like I love that you brought up the history, and we have the time to talk about this, right? Yeah,
go for it.
I'll stay here all night if you let me. But people forget. Let's look at the 1970s when everybody had like a rival league. These leagues at that time are not worth what they're worth now, right? Like it's not a multi-billion, $100 billion industry at that time. It's in the millions or something like that. I mean, you know, the game has evolved to the point from a business standpoint. These are billion-dollar organizations now. So you need more money to run that. So when a league shuts down, it's not like you can just come back and play, right? Like you have to have the financial stability to make it work. The other thing too, you know, you want to talk about the 1930s and 40s. I mean, they paid those guys. Not those guys were treated like cattle. I mean, they didn't pay players what they pay them today. I mean, like we didn't even get into like the no trade clause, right? Like the players couldn't even switch teams at that time, right? Unless the owner said they could. So it's all part of the evolution of sports. I think, believe it or not, the NFL led the way of making a professional sports league become a financial monster, for lack of a better word. And I think the other sports leagues are following suit. But yeah, like again, it's always important to note, because I always hear like kind of that evil business side versus the fan side. We as a society have chose sports to be something we invest a lot of money into. It's a symbiotic relationship, right? And again, there are some good owners and there's some bad owners. That's a whole nother show on how they spend that money. Okay. But at the end of the day, I always try and remind people that, especially like commissioners, like they're not as evil as you think. Right. They have to make tough decisions for the financial security of these leagues. And if they don't do that, the league can fold. Right. And again, look at what the XFL's doing. Right. It's kind of brilliant how they've marketed themselves. But originally, XFL was supposed to rival the NFL. Right. Like, you know, they saw it was done. Or professional wrestling is a better example. Right. Like the WWE kind of went on its knees there for a little bit in terms of just like they were hurting and all these rival leagues popped up and they're doing very well. The leagues are not as safe as you think they are, right? So again, that's a whole nother topic for another show if you want.
That we could definitely dive into this on another show at another time, because I've been enjoying this conversation, because I don't think this is talked enough about just how much these leagues can struggle or are struggling. I mean, right. You look at the football, you look at the AFL, USFL, these football leagues that have tried to make a comeback that only lasted one season. I think it was the AFL, a league that stopped playing in the middle of the season,
right?
Because we had a team in Orlando that was pretty much one loss at the time that were picked to win a championship.
Right.
They stopped in the middle of the season just because they ran into financial trouble.
There's no revenue. Yeah. Look, I'm gonna say it again. It's a symbiotic relationship. If people are not coming to watch, it's not going to work. And really, in a privatized business model, these leagues, these teams have to do what they need to do to bring you into the ballpark, the ice rink, the football field, you know, the basketball court. You got to want to go, right? So there's a lot of things that have to happen to make a team or a league successful. I mean, there has to be parity, right? Like another reason why I had a problem with baseball for so long. It's like, you know, halfway through the season, you already know how it's going to shape up. Now that they've expanded the playoffs, that's changed a little bit. Thank goodness. Like, again, another show, man, but the traditionalist attitude towards that really bugged me. It's like, you guys need to extend the playoffs. You need to, and now we're seeing magic happen every year. Right. Yeah. So sometimes the old school thinking gets in the way, I think, of everybody, but yeah, I think they've done a great job post pandemic. America needs its sports. It really does. I don't fight that. I think that it brings so much joy and pain, but it brings so much joy to people to be part of that community, right? To be able to follow their team and to passionately follow their team and to know their team might have their back. I think it's a wonderful thing, you know. And again, yeah, do I think that we spend too much money on professional sports in this country? When you compare it to the medical system, or you compare it to teachers, you know, or other organizations in the public sector that are doing good, yes, I do. But at the same time, we chose that. Right? We've chosen this as the place that we want to do that. So it's fascinating when you really dive into it.
It is fascinating. So, Lee, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. This has been an excellent conversation. We'll definitely have to continue this conversation at another time. But thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I really do appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure, Adam. Thanks for doing the show. And yeah, I look forward to that conversation in the future.
Awesome. And to those of you that tune in, thank you much for tuning in. We'll post this episode on Monday, but have a good night, and we'll see everyone next week.